Okay. So, okay, for new joining, we just wait a couple of minutes before starting the session to give time to our colleagues to connect. And meanwhile, just type your name in the chat. Also writing where you are joining us from. Okay. Great. I see people from everywhere. New York, Kenya, US, India, Uganda. It's a good variety. Georgia, US. Kate from Rome, hello. I'm also joining from Rome, so I'm Noemi, the Conscious Food Systems Alliance Community Manager. Very happy to be here. And this session will be about this training, which is the Empower Worldview training developed by Worldvision, which is a humanitarian organization working in over 100 countries. The session has been organized by COPSA, the Conscious Food Systems Alliance, that, as you know, has the focus on the inner development, on the inner capacities that activate systemic change and regeneration. And in particular, this is an in-depth session, so we really zoom in into this inspiring program and training, and is part of a broader collective inquiry which we launched on the 27th of April on cultivating conscious local communities and cultures for regeneration, where we explore together how to help cultivate regenerative mindset cultures among local communities. But before going into directly into the session, I would like to invite Yuli, who is the program manager of Worldvision, to just give us a grounding practice so we can gently arrive into this session. So I pass the word to Yuli. And
thank you. Thank you, Noemi. Thank you for a deepest appreciation for the opportunity to be engaging with all of you. So for all of you, my name is Yuli, and as Noemi has mentioned, I'm from Worldvision, US, but I'm actually based in Singapore right now. So let's start with a simple exercise, just so that we can arrive or ground ourselves. So just join me in a simple breathing exercise. Now you can put away all your devices, except obviously the one that you are using now. And just close your eyes. You can turn off the video. I'm just going to turn off my video too, so that I can also be participating in this. Yeah, I don't have to look at the screen. Just continue to listen to the sound of my voice. Now we're going to start by releasing some energy now. And so make sure you are sitting comfortably. Now I want you, as you are sitting, to roll your shoulders forward to the count of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I want you to continue to roll your shoulders backwards to the count of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And with your hands beside you, shake your hands to release some of the energy that is pent up in you. This is a time where we want to come totally relaxed and totally focused. And we just want to just release and remove some of the excess energy that we have. Okay, now that you are a bit more relaxed, hopefully, I want you to take a deep breath through your nose and exhale through your mouth. Now I'm just going to count to 5 as you breathe in, count to 5 as you hold your breath, and another 5 as you exhale through your mouth. Okay, now we breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we hold in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we exhale through your mouth in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we do that again, but I will not count this time. Just take your time to breathe in, hold, and exhale. Just be conscious about the gap between your exhale and inhale. Breathe in, hold, and breathe out. Now this slow breathing will continue to induce your calm and your relaxation. And I just want you to continue with deep breathing, holding, and exhaling. As you continue this exercise of breathing, let go of your thoughts about your work, about your tasks, your concerns, and importantly, just focus on the moment and your breathing. Be conscious about your breathing. As you breathe in, hold, and you breathe out. One last time, breathe in, hold, and breathe out. Great. So I'd like you to now slowly bring your attention back to the room. Begin to notice the sounds around you, begin to open your eyes. I'm just turning on my video. I hope that has helped in some way to be present in this space that we have. It's a very sacred space. Everything that we do here will have an implication on the life of people that we work with. And I just pray that we will continue to learn from one another. We pray that you will continue to also experience a transformation as we learn more about Empowered Worldview, and also to consider, to reflect on this, and to consider how this might be of help in your work, and to perhaps even think about, how does this really impact the communities that we work in. I want to thank you for your time for this exercise, and I'd like to pass the time back to Noemi. Is that back to you, or should I pass it to Daniel?
It's back to me. Thank you very much, Yuli.
Great.
Thank you. I invite all of you to turn on, if you can, the video, so it's more personal. And thank you. Good to see you. And okay, so yes, this session is about the Empowered Worldview training, and as we know, is part of the big collective inquiry that we launched in April 27. So I'll just share the slide so you can see visually. So we launched this collective inquiry in April on cultivating conscious local communities and cultures for regeneration. And now we are diving into this methodologies that we have identified. So the Gaia Eco-Village education design curriculum that we had on the 31st of May, and today will be on the Empowered Worldview training. And then in July, we will have the holistic development training by Opportunity International. So for today's session, I would like just to give a bit of framing, because as we know, this training is really helping to transform people's mental worldview and mental attitude. And sometimes, mental attitudes of hopelessness or risk aversion can really be an obstacle for our human flourishing, for development. So I'm very glad that today we have Daniel and Daniel and Christopher with us, because they have been working in this curriculum for years, and Daniel will give the framework of this curriculum, what is how it's structured, what is the content, and also will lead us through the impact, why it worked so well in order to change worldview at the local levels. And while Christopher will give us a bit more insight on the field, how it applies to different countries, and how in particular it applies to Asia. So I just introduce themselves. So Daniel is the regional director for East Africa for the World Vision International for the Faith and Development sector. And I let you, Daniel, just introduce yourself, your work, and please, share your knowledge with us.
Thank you very much, Naomi. I hope you can hear me very well.
Yes, we can. Would you mind to introduce yourself first to the...
Yes, I'll do that.
Okay, good.
So I think you've said Daniel Muvengi is my name. I am a Kenyan and I live in Nairobi. I'm working, serving with World Vision at the East Africa Regional Office. I'm looking at 9 countries in basically East Africa and Horn of Africa. And I'm married and I'm blessed with 3 children, 2 young adults, and 1 who is just about to cross over teenage life. And it's a joy to be here today and to participate in this process. So I think, Naomi, if I can continue, right?
Yes, sure.
Great. It's such a privilege to be here and to be able to share with us together as we think about this whole issue around how do we accompany communities and communities to be able to embrace a regenerative culture, really. That's exactly what you're talking about. And we're looking at this within the broader, the broader area around production and all that. So I want just to spend this time to provide a very high level overview of the World Vision's Empowered Worldview model. And I hope we can be able to reflect in terms of looking at its relevance for us who are members of the COFSA Alliance, and looking at how we can use it in our own context, in our own organizations, to be able to improve this regenerative culture, create it here. So let me start by a definition that we call it a working definition, because we tend to adjust in different contexts. So when you're talking about the EWV, or the Empowered Worldview, it's actually a faith-based empowerment approach, and which targets individuals and targets communities and targets families, and it gives them an opportunity to interrogate and examine beliefs and mindsets and behaviors. And they examine that in the light of Scripture and God's plan for each individual and for each community. And participants who take part in this training meet together in workshop setting, and people during that time, they have an opportunity to reflect on where they are as individuals and communities. And as they reflect on those challenges, they affirm their own sense of identity. Who are they in light of God's, in light of God's the creator? So reflecting in terms of their identity, affirming their sense of worthy, dignity, and their agency. And that, as they reflect on those 3 critical things, it allows them to experience change and participate in sustainable transformative change. Let me give a very quick background to say we started this in 2015. I was based in Tanzania, and we developed this approach in the context of small order farming, farming strategy that we were working on. And so the initial place we integrated this is livelihoods or food security programming. But since then, we have been able to expand to other different sectors. We've seen that this expand now in more than 40 countries in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, and soon to be launched in the Middle East and Eastern Europe, actually in the next 2 weeks' time. And as a faith-based approach, it uses principles to target mindsets in order that when mindsets are transformed, then they begin to influence the behaviors at the personal level, at the family, and the community level. And the training itself, which takes 3 days, and actually we've structured this into 2 levels. Level 1 takes 3 to 4 days, which actually focusing on casting the vision of empowered worldview. And that's 3 to 4 days. And level 2 takes about 2 to 3 days, which actually focuses on equipping the people, those who would like to become T or Fs or trainer or facilitators to acquire some facilitation skills. And so, as I say, this one targets farmers. We can target service group members, faith leaders, community influencers, youth, and other people in the community. And actually, it's one of the World Vision's, one of the 18 core project models of World Vision. So it's actually a very important resource that we have as an organization. Just give me a second. So let me talk a little bit about the structure of empowered worldview. To say that in a nutshell, just to summarize, that we illustrate the structure by looking at what we call the empowered worldview house. It's like building a strong house. And that house, as what we call the first level of that structure, is actually, we call it foundations, basically addressing foundational issues where people have an opportunity to reflect on their culture, on the beliefs, on the values, and the perceptions, and practices, behaviors that actually emerge from that context, within that context. We also, during that time, we emphasize on 4 foundational, what we call 4 foundations, foundational pillars. The first one is, during that foundational discussion, we talk about the place of faith and how faith impacts life from all around. We focus around, for discussion around what people have, focusing on local assets, the assets that people have, and how they are able to utilize those assets to be able to usher transformation within their own context. And these are things like land, livestock, forest, trees, talents and skills and resources that are within the community, and how they can actually be able to utilize those talents to be able to, and resources to be able to work transformation for their own context. And then the third area that we focus on is actually around focusing on the transformation of each individual. It's about targeting one individual at a time, because we believe when one person is empowered, that person is able to usher empowerment to his family and be able to usher the same to the community. And so it targets the change from inside. We want people that when they reflect on their faith and their own values, their own beliefs and their own perceptions, actually to be able to make personal, conscious decisions. And that change, when change is entrenched right inside, then that change begins to manifest externally. And it also focuses around relationship where we say people need to be talking to one another. People, communities need to be working together, because when they share together, they share resources, they share talents that are within there. They can share work together, and they can be able to overcome many challenges when communities choose to work together. So that's a foundation. And then once we lay the foundation of the house, we say we have 4 main pillars that the house must stand on. And those pillars are, we have the pillar of identity, basically helping people to be able to reconcile with who they are. And, and because it's a faith-based, we use, for example, the Christian perspective, people to be able to reflect who they are, that we see people created in God's image with a purpose, with responsibility around that. So affirming identity in terms of who they are, but also affirming what they have. What is it God has put at their disposal? And then from identity, we shift to the second pillar, which is actually vision, helping people to dream. What is their future? When do they see themselves, their families, their communities in the next 5, 10, 20 years? And how do they set that vision together? And then we emphasize the third one, which is actually compassion, which is actually a role issue around empathy, being able to have a heart to care, to support, to work with everyone else. And the fourth one is actually relationship. The emphasis around the need to work together, the need to be in a relationship. We know transformation happens in the context of relationship. And when we erect the pillars, then the final thing we focus on is actually erecting the roof of the house, which is actually faith in action. And what that means is actually how do we translate what we have learned as foundational for us as an individual, as a community, that enables us to build a strong house or a strong household, or to build a strong community. What are those issues that we have reflected? They are critical. The need to love, the need to share, the need to work together, issues of trust, issues of work ethic, issues of addressing the common problems we face, but building around the pillars and challenging people to say, can we develop action plan on how to address those issues within their own context? And for us in World Vision, we have found it very instrumental in driving the well-being of children outcomes by addressing the root causes of poverty around that. I would like to talk a little bit around what I would call, what we look at as how does that transformation during the training actually focus around. First and foremost, on the right you see is where we're talking about many of the communities that we work with. They find themselves in extreme poverty. And there are factors that contribute to this extremeness, extreme situations, extreme lack of food, extreme circumstances that communities they find themselves in. And here talking about poverty, I'm talking poverty from a broader perspective. But there are 3 things that we have learned, and through this model, we have found very helpful. One, when an individual has a broken identity, which are literally the issues of the heart, stemming from beliefs of values, where people feel they are rejected, unwanted, hated, feared, and people feel like they are cursed, and their situation is like God sent that. That's what we call a broken identity. And broken identity leads to broken mindsets. And these are issues of the mind, where people feel helpless and hopeless, unworthy, and almost giving up. And when broken identities and broken mindset work together, they contribute to broken behaviors in the community. That's why people, because of having wrong beliefs and wrong values, they engage in destructive behaviors, things like domestic violence, hatred, exploitation, injustice, and conflict. You think about the destruction of the environment around that, the land, how they even farm, and they don't care about it. So these 3 working together, they lead to extreme poverty. But our goal in About Worldview is to transform from extreme poverty to where we want to see every individual and every household and every community thrive. How does that happen? We want to transition them. We want to empower them to change from broken identities to where they have identities that are empowered. where people begin to feel themselves as loved and they can laugh, cared for and they can care. They can have empathy for one another, compassion for one another. People see themselves as created in God's image, where people feel have a sense of belonging. They are stewards and they are co-creators. That is an empowered identity. But then an empowered identity leads to an empowered mindset. People begin to feel they have a hope, they have a future, they have a direction, they have a purpose, and they can pursue it. And when an empowered identity, an empowered mindset work together, they lead to empowered behaviors that we see. That's how we begin to see people embracing new technologies for farming. That's why we begin to see people beginning to care for the environment. That's why we begin to see people loving and embracing the poor and the needy. People see themselves as responsible and productive in their own context, and people value everyone there, each person in the community. So moving from extreme poverty to where they are thriving. As I move towards closure, I just want to talk about why has this been very successful. 4 things that we have found very helpful. First, because it goes deeper to address the dependent syndrome that is so prevalent in many of the communities that we work in. And as it does that, it goes deeper to challenge the persistent fatalistic mindsets that create hopelessness and helplessness. And then many of the communities are characterized by cultural practices. Some are positive, others are negative. Empowered worldview builds on the positive and targets to transform false negative cultural practices like witchcraft. People don't want to progress because there is fear of witchcraft. And finally, it helps in addressing the root causes of poverty. And that's where we are able to bring in the place of faith, because faith is very important. Have we learned any lessons that we have learned? Yes, I want to highlight 3. First and foremost, we have seen that faith is an asset, and we need to recover that as we discuss around how we want to develop regenerative cultures. Faith is central, and we encourage people from all faiths to be able to bring in their faith into reflecting around their context, whether it's they are farmers, whether they are doing business, or whether they are caring for the environment. But also, we need to embrace the conversation should be centered around people, not development or about things, but really empowering people, transforming people, because transformed individuals transform communities. And the third lessons you have learned is that there is need for organizations to embrace an empowerment mindset and processes. How does an organization align its processes, its work, its ethic, its culture? And that is where mindsets are very important. And behaviors that an organization has is very important. And processes that actually contribute to empowerment. Are there challenges? 3 main ones. First and foremost, how do you do a faith? Like, for example, the empowered worldview, when we developed, it was developed from a Christian perspective. But actually adapting it in different multi-faith context has been a journey for us, and we are learning a lot from it. What about integrating matters of faith in sectors? You know, sometimes many sectors want to be very siloed. If people are doing food security, they don't want to think around how faith and cultures and beliefs and values affect that work that they are involved in. But there's also the issue around donor expectations versus actually the actual issues that communities are facing. And I think from about worldview, we have said we want to go deeper to interrogate the deeper things. And sometimes some donors may just want to do certain things, but they don't want to go deeper around that. 3 challenges that we have learned. How does the process happen? For example, an organization that wants to embrace about worldview and start rolling it out, 4 phases where we move from prepare in terms of looking at the top leadership of the organization so that you have buy-in, or whether you are working with faith communities, you talk at the top leaders to get buy-in, And then the second phase is begin to create awareness within that organizational structure. And then you begin to catalyze, creating action groups, working, targeting different people that a project is involved in a community. And then the next fourth phase is actually sustain, where you actually accompany that community. And we have seen people go through this in the first 6 months or 12 months or 18 months. They are able actually to transition from in terms of impact. What those that have gone through this, what we hear them say, and we actually been involved in research. We actually completing one in Tanzania. We have done another one in Zambia. And what we are hearing people point to is that their living conditions have improved in terms of housing. Their farming, their garden is changing. They were farming in certain ways. Now they are farming in different ways. There is more in production. There is more incomes. Their children are able to get to school because of incomes. And there is a higher resilience. But at a higher level, we are looking at relationships that are transforming. Issues of gender violence, based violence are no longer there because people and spouses are working together. Communities are working together. Communities of different faiths are working together because they are focusing on the things that are core for them. People are able to plan for their future, and people are stepping out to try new things. And people are beginning to believe that actually change and success is possible because their self-esteem is building and communities are building. And all that is possible because people are experiencing empowerment and transformation of beliefs, values, and behaviors around that. And this is the last slide I want to talk about, to say we are being involved in adapting this to different contexts. We are looking at religious context, and my colleague Christopher is going to share one example. But we also think around language, and we are thinking about what about fragile context. And we are rolling out this in South Sudan, in Burundi, in the context of conflict and peace building, Uganda, in the context of refugee and the communities that find themselves in, and Indonesia. We also think around targeting children, and we have actually finalized one tool that is adapting the Worldview curriculum for children aged 8 to 12. And now we are working on another one for age 13 and above, those young people around that. And then we are formalizing a process for a multi-faith fashion for an empowered worldview that we can use. And I think in conclusion, I say empowered worldview is more than just teaching a man how to fish. Sorry, not finish, but how to fish. But it's more than that, but it's also about helping them to begin to address some of the systematic issues, like who owns actually the ponds, the fish ponds, who owns the rivers and the lakes? Because poverty, there are other systematic structural issues that must be addressed if people have to be empowered and step out to bring change. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Very powerful presentation. Thank you. And I pass the word to Christopher, and then later we will have minutes for Q&A. And I see Yuli put more information in the chat about the training, so you can also explore there. And yeah, pass the word to you.
Thank you, Naomi and friends. Yeah, and thank you, Daniel, for giving us that in-depth understanding about the empowered worldview from your experiences in Tanzania. And this has been wonderful opportunity for me to share from the field experiences in India. As friends, as you have listened to Daniel speak about the empowered worldview in the context in Africa and how that has been changing lives. So we looked at how this could look beyond Africa, beyond Tanzania, in other continents as well. So we looked at it, even as you heard him say that, it all started in 2015. By 2017, Daniel was in Nagpur in Maharashtra, and we were looking at how we can do a startup workshop to look at the context in which that we were working for over a decade. In India, World Vision was working in among the many other places, also in a region called Vidarbha, which is on the eastern part of Maharashtra state. As you see in the map, if you look closely, it is slightly on the darker shade. And we were in one of those districts, which is called as Yavatmal. It was in 2007 that we started to work there. We started as a relief program because of the spate of farmers' suicides that were coming up in Maharashtra, especially in Yavatmal and in the Vidarbha region, because of a series of crop failures and the high cost of producing cotton, and the farmers' lack of access to farming services. And so there were many things that were adding on to or accumulating on the problems that the farmers were facing, and many of them were taking away their lives. So it was in that context that we started the Vidarbha Farmers Livelihood Project. So it was in 2007, we looked at three things: specific livelihood recovery intervention through agriculture and allied and non-farming activities, assessing distress, looking at psychosocial issues within the household and how we can help them to come out of whatever that they were facing, and also looking at market-based and value chain to look at how the farmers who are producing the crops could have better access to markets and opportunities, and also with the already going through the difficulties, how families can have some resilience within the families. So as it progressed, by 2016 to 2020, we had the second round of the program. So we were looking at more of coping abilities within families and communities, increased nutrition, and also looking at some of these issues that we were, the farmers were going through at that time, and trying to see how best that we would be able to do some recovery. It was in 2017 that we tried to look at how the empowered worldview could also work in this context. Though it had worked in a very predominantly in a Christian or a Muslim context, in the East African context. So we looked at how this could also work in contexts that are multi-faith, with different faith backgrounds, people from various faith backgrounds coming together. So we launched on this exercise to start on the and to do the empowered worldview and interfaith approach to asset-based community development. And that is what emerged out of this innovative thinking and idea, that trying to look at it in a context that was very different, but the problems that our farmers were facing was very similar to that in the East African context: lack of empowerment, lack of knowledge about looking at alternate ways of farming. So there were many things that were quite similar, but there were also differences. So we came up with looking at how faith leaders in the local context could also contribute to addressing the belief systems that are there in the communities that are preventing them from, in a very progressive way, in participating in the development activities. So we looked at the same themes that what Daniel was sharing about the pillars of the empowered worldview: identity, vision, compassion, relationship, and assets. So we looked at how these translate in the various faith contexts, or the religious, or in the social, cultural context in which that the people are living, and how that they would embrace a more progressive way of an alternate to look at development. So we came up with a curriculum that connects with the people, included the faith perspectives of the local faith perspectives and practices, and how that connects, and what are those things that the communities can take up as correctives and change towards a belief that is more progressive. So we looked at worldviews and their belief systems, and the cartoons that you see, the caricatures that you see, were all developed by the faith leaders when they were addressing, or when they were doing the workshops together, and as we were interacting with them. And some of them we who were very good who were very creative, developed these things. So we kind of built them up into our curriculum and in the workshop materials as well. So worldviews and belief systems, we looked at worldviews and belief systems. Next one, can you move your, yes, poverty, how people are viewing poverty from their lenses of their particular faith. And we also looked at worldview themes from their religious perspectives, that is how they view identity, who they are, what is their view about themselves, why are they in poverty, continuing to be in a context where they are helpless. Is there a way out that I can think through or do something about it? So we also looked at their belief systems and from their own faith perspectives, and also looked at how a worldview that will change them to move, which was also coming from the people, trying to look at what is that I can let go and embrace something that is progressive. What are those assets that I have? What are all those relationships that I can build within the communities, than being siloed or being alone and not participating or not in getting into my networks and making the best of my abilities and networks. So it was helping them to look at their assets and participate, use their skills and creativity, and move towards an asset-based community development progressively.
Christopher?
Yes, is my time over?
Yes, because we can have time for Q&A also. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
If you want to finish, you can finish.
So, yeah. So these are the worldview themes that we looked at, and also, so this was what we learned from them, was that yes, even youth and young people are participating, and they were progressive, and they were able to change the mindsets of even older farmers. And the faith leaders and their participation and helping them to change their mindsets was helping them to come out of poverty. And many of them even changed their farming practices were able to have access to resources and participate in the development process. Yeah, I think that would help.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, so we can open the flow. Yeah. And if any of you ask questions, we will have both Christopher and Daniel trying to answer your curiosities. So feel free. Shruti.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. I was just about to raise my hand. Yeah, first of all, Christopher and Daniel, thanks so much for sharing those experiences and insights. I think it's really nice how you have highlighted how so much of this work is really invisible in a sense. You know, we don't see the relationships being built. It's quite difficult to measure. And my question is really about, it seems like a lot of the success of this empowerment or shifting mindset kind of hinges on the facilitator, the person who's setting the curriculum, the training of the trainers. So really the details, the very fine details of who these people are and how they interact with communities. And I was just wondering if you could shed some light on what the challenges are there, like, you know, what are your learnings around some of these intricacies, the details. Yeah, if you could just maybe share a little bit more about that, it would be really great.
Thank you very much. I think that's true. And we have a saying that actually in Empowered Worldview workshop and programming, actually 70% is about facilitation and that percent is about the content in terms of being able to create the change that we want to see. And so when we get into a context, we do not go straight to start just mobilizing and training farmers or faith leaders or communities. As I said, we start at the top and then we do the first level of workshop, which we call it the envisioning workshop, which gives an opportunity to a number of people to participate. And out of it, we are able to select fairly good people that we train them to become the facilitators. Because we want facilitators who can model what you're talking about. We want facilitators who can demonstrate faith literacy, and people can be able to work across cultures and contexts, but people can facilitate and by asking the right questions so that the solutions can come from the people. So sometimes one of the challenges when we get the wrong facilitators, then we know that work may not be very effective. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the challenges around selection. The other challenge is also faith. You know, we talk about faith. If we talk, for example, about the Christian faith, you know, in different places, there are different expressions and some church denominations have certain doctrines, and we can talk about the same in other faiths. So sometimes how you navigate those ones requires a lot of maturity of the facilitator to be able to provoke the right questions where people can be able to seek local solutions.
Thank you. Maybe if I can just a follow-up question, how do you think donors might be able to kind of, you know, support the work of facilitators more than they perhaps currently do?
If I would actually talk the context that we have seen since we started rolling out this in World Vision, we have been amazed by the interest donors have come alongside to support our program to a level where our vision has actually made about Worldview as a core foundational model that needs to be done before you start a new project, before you start a new initiative in the community. Because it's like about Worldview comes to clean some of the negative mindsets and behaviors and the practices that may undermine the very project that you want to do. And so just to say, we've seen a lot of donors coming to do it. And the other reason is because the results are quick with Empowered Worldview. And it's cheaper to roll it out because it's done in communities, under trees, you know, in schools. We don't need to take people to hotels for workshops. It's just brought closer to the community. And it has a ripple effect. You mobilize 20 and they go to mobilize others. And within a very short time, you create a critical mass of change agents in communities that are actually working towards transformation.
Okay, thank you so much.
Just thanks, Daniel, for that very in-depth way of sharing. Just a line that I want to share is, empowerment happens. It is about life transforming life. I know it's not about our things that we give or handouts that we give are going to change the way people their poverty, getting them out of the poverty. But what we've learned is it's about the lives of the facilitators that really matters, and it is their lives that transform other lives.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Thank you. Any other questions for Christopher, Daniel, or curiosities? Anything else you would like to know or ask? We have Darren comment in the chat. This is a fascinating presentation. Very refreshing to know faith is alive in development. That's true. Thank you, Darren. Anyone else want to step in?
Yeah, hi, this is Mary Pat from Opportunity. Can
Hi.
you hear me? Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. It's a really nice framework and a really nice example of how it works in practice, and, so amazing that you've been able to integrate it throughout the organization. So thank you for sharing all of that. My main question is, when you're first entering a community, if this is your entry point, your first intervention before you do other things, how do you introduce it, and how do you recruit clients to spend 3-4 days with you when they don't even know you yet? Like, how do you do the outreach and recruitment so that people are willing to spend that amount of time? Thank you.
Christopher, you want to go?
I'm sorry, the voice was not very audible.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Mary, could you please repeat the questions or just put in the chat?
Could you? Yes. You can put it on the chat.
I'm trying to ask about recruitment and how you convince a new community to spend 4 or 5 days with you in training. Like, how do you introduce this to a new community? How do you market it? How do you recruit the new participants to spend that much time with you? Thank you.
Thank you.
Many of our trainers, facilitators are in our projects where we work, and so as part of their work in the communities, they carry this out, and people are participating this not on a 9 to 5 time on an everyday basis. Many of them meet in the evenings or in the mornings as they come together, time with the communities. So we spend, as Daniel was sharing, we meet under the trees, and so there's not much of a cost for the community people to come together and to work in those times that they can share their time together. So of course, every community has time for coming together. So we make use of those times of coming together on a regular basis. And it all depends on how people allocate this time and work together. And so even as the facilitators are facilitating, they are also modeling, they are also practitioners in the communities. When you're talking about alternate farming or looking at ways of doing things differently, they are doing it in their own backyards of how we can do things differently. So in that way, it helps others to see from their models. We saw people who were cotton growers who said that wheat doesn't grow in the places where we are. They started to grow wheat, and then they started to harvest it, and it was a something different that they have not tried out. Farmers were only cotton farmers were also who did not have subsistence farming, trying to have their own kitchen gardens, that they will not do it. We saw people change, because our facilitators were growing their own kitchen garden. And the farmers were saying, yes, now I know all along I would only buy vegetables. I will not grow my own vegetables. Though I have land, I have everything, I know the know-how, but I could only do cash crops. And that's my way of living. I would only buy in the market. But now people are growing their own food crops, and they are sharing it with their neighbors and also selling it in the local market. So which is a changed paradigm for them. And that comes from the models that the facilitators are modeling out, living it out in their own ways, and helping them to understand, yes, this is possible, we can do it. The pride of saying that, I only grow cash crops. Now I'm able to let go of that pride and say that, yes, I can also have my own kitchen garden and have raised wonderful crops and share and enjoy that produce. And that's something different.
Thank you. I see questions from Darren in the chat.
Can I make a quick comment on some of the questions?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Before I comment on Darren, Patel Shruti is talking about, do we have a manual? Yes, we do have a manual, but we recommend only those that are betrayed to be able to access the manual, because we don't want people to go and run with it. They have not been trained, and so they may begin to misrepresent it. But we can talk more around that if there is interest from any of the organizations. How do we navigate some of the deep-seated cultural issues? I think one of the processes we engage in during the training is to walk through a participatory, because the whole training is very participatory. We map some of the cultural practices, even the negative cultural practices that undermine progress in a community, including gender, related to gender, and other issues. And then this is where faith becomes important. We begin to present the perspective of the faith and I can talk about the Christian faith where I'm more conversant with, that we begin to present where there is inequality. We begin to present the Christian message of God's heart for everyone to be equal, created in his image. Everyone has potential. Everyone can contribute. And then when people go through the training, including those that had been socially orchestrated, and they go to become examples in the community, it's a big motivation for others that are still struggling with the same issues in the community.
Thank you. I'm aware of the time, so I don't want to stay longer. I will put in the chat some links for the next events, and I thank you very much, Christopher and Daniel, for your time and for offering us this very inspiring session. And I thank everyone that was here with us today. And hopefully we see you for the next event that is happening on the 6th of July on the farmers' well-being and psychological resilience. So thank you very much and have a nice day. Thank you, Yuli.
Thank you all. That's really
you.
great and engaging with this.